The Vorathi dreadnought hung in the darkness between galaxies like a sleeping predator. Its name was the Endless Maw, and for 10,000 years it had carried death to every corner of known space. The ship was 3 kilometers long, built from black metal that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Looking at it was like staring into a wound in reality itself. Commander Sithrak stood on the observation deck and watched the stars. He was tall, even for his kind. His body was covered in dark scales that shifted color with his mood. 4 arms hung at his sides, each ending in claws that could tear through steel. His eyes were the color of dying suns, and they held no warmth at all. The Vorathi were old. They had been hunting other species since before most civilizations learned to make fire. They did not conquer worlds for resources or territory. They hunted because it was their nature, because they enjoyed it, because nothing in the universe had ever given them a reason to stop. A junior officer approached and bowed low. "Commander, our scouts have found something." Sithrak did not turn around. "Show me." A hologram appeared in the air before him. It showed a ship, small and simple compared to the Endless Maw. The design was crude but functional. Sithrak studied it with mild interest. "A colony vessel," the officer explained. "Human origin. It carries approximately 10,000 passengers in cryogenic sleep. They are traveling to a planet on the edge of the outer arm. Humans." Sithrak tasted the word. His species had only recently become aware of humanity. They were new to space travel, barely a few centuries into their expansion. The Vorathi had been watching them, studying them, waiting to see if they were worth hunting. "Their ship has minimal weapons," the officer continued. "No military escort. They appear to be simple settlers." "Easy prey," Sithrak said. But there was no excitement in his voice. Easy prey was boring prey. "There is one thing of interest, Commander. The ship's captain is awake. She takes rotating shifts out of cryosleep to monitor the vessel's systems. Our scans show she is currently active." Now Sithrak turned. A captain who stayed awake while her people slept. Someone who took responsibility, who led from the front. That was slightly more interesting. Her name? Elena Vasquez, 43 years old. Former military officer. She led the colonization effort after serving in something called the Border Wars. A soldier then. Sithrak felt the first stirring of anticipation. "Prepare a boarding party. I will lead it myself." The Endless Maw moved like a shadow through space. It made no sound, gave no warning. By the time the human ship detected its approach, it was already too late. The dreadnought's claws, massive grappling arms designed for exactly this purpose, seized the colony vessel and held it tight. On board the Horizon's Promise, alarms screamed to life. Elena Vasquez was in the command center when the attack began. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced speed, but she already knew it was hopeless. The ship that held them was larger than anything she had ever seen. "All hands, this is the captain." She spoke into the intercom. Her voice was calm, steady. "We are under attack by an unknown vessel. All crew, report to emergency stations. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt to wake the colonists. We cannot protect them if they are conscious." She had 12 crew members awake with her. 12 people against whatever was coming through those airlock doors. It would not be enough. She knew it would not be enough, but she was a soldier. And soldiers fought even when they could not win. The airlock exploded inward. Elena raised her weapon, a simple plasma pistol that suddenly felt like a toy in her hands. Through the smoke came nightmares. The Vorathi moved with terrible grace. They were faster than creatures their size had any right to be. Elena fired once, twice, 3 times. Her shots hit their armor and did nothing at all. One of her crew members screamed as he was cut down. Then another. Then another dot in less than 2 minutes. It was over. Elena stood alone in the command center, surrounded by the bodies of her people. Her weapon was empty. Her hands were shaking. But she did not run, and she did not beg. The largest of the creatures stepped forward. He was different from the others. There was intelligence in his eyes, and something worse. Curiosity. "You are the captain," he said. His voice was like stones grinding together. "You are Elena Vasquez." "And you are a murderer," she replied. Sithrak tilted his head, studying her. Most species cowered at this point. They wept, they pleaded, they offered anything to survive. This human did none of those things. She stood straight, looked him in the eye, and insulted him. "Interesting. Your species is unknown to most of the galaxy," Sithrak said. "You are new. You are weak. You have no allies, no great fleets, no ancient weapons. You are alone in the dark, and you do not even know what lives in it." "So educate me," Elena said. Her voice did not waver. Sithrak smiled, though it was a terrible thing to see. "I am Commander Sithrak of the Varathi Dominion. My people have hunted since before your world had life. We have ended civilizations older than your sun. We do not conquer. We do not negotiate. We take what amuses us, and we destroy the rest. And what do you want with us? Your colonists will be harvested. Their biological material has value. Your crew is already dead. But you, Captain Vasquez, you I will keep for a while." He leaned closer, and his breath was cold against her face. "I will break you. I will take everything you are and leave nothing behind. And when I am finished, your species will be forgotten. But I will remember you. For a little while." Elena looked up at the monster before her. She thought of her crew dead on the floor. She thought of 10,000 sleeping people who trusted her to keep them safe. She thought of everything she had fought for, everything she had believed in, and she smiled odd. It was a small thing, just a slight curve of her lips. But Sithrak saw it, and for just a moment, he did not understand. "Something amuses you?" he asked. "You have no idea what you have done," Elena said quietly. "You have no idea what we are." Sithrak laughed. It was an ugly sound. "You are prey. Nothing more." He gestured to his soldiers. "Take her." As the claws closed around her arms, as she was dragged away from everything she knew, Elena held on to that smile. It was the only weapon she had left, but it would be enough. The interrogation sphere was a room with no corners. It floated in the center of the endless maw, suspended by magnetic fields that cut it off from the rest of the ship. There was no door. Prisoners were transported in and out by a beam of light that took them apart and put them back together. The walls were made of something that looked like glass but was harder than diamond. And it was cold. So cold that frost formed on Elena's skin within minutes of her arrival. Sithrak visited her every day. He was patient, methodical, and very, very skilled at what he did. The Varathi had been breaking minds for thousands of years, and they had turned it into an art form. They knew exactly how much pain a body could take before it shut down. They knew how to keep someone conscious when every nerve was screaming for relief. They knew how to find the deepest fears hidden in any mind and bring them into the light. For the first 3 days, Sithrak used pain. The tools he used had no names in any human language. Some of them burned. Some of them cut. Some of them did things to the nervous system that made reality itself seem to twist and break. Elena screamed until her voice gave out, and then she screamed silently, her mouth open and her body shaking. But she did not break. On the 4th day, Sithrak changed his approach. "You colonists," he said, standing over a crumpled form. "Would you like to see what is happening to them?" Elena could barely lift her head. Her body was a landscape of pain. But she forced her eyes open and looked at the images he showed her. The cryogenic pods were being opened one by one. The sleeping humans were carried out like cargo, tagged and sorted. Some were taken to medical bays where Varathi scientists studied them with cold fascination. Others were sent to holding cells, stacked like animals waiting for slaughter. 10,000 souls, Sithrek said softly. And you are responsible for all of them. You brought them here. You promised them a new home. And now they will die slowly and painfully because you were not strong enough to protect them. Elena watched the images. Tears ran down her face, cutting tracks through the blood and dirt. But still, she did not break. On the 5th day, Sithrek tried a different kind of cruelty. I have been studying your species, he told her. You are strange creatures. You form bonds with each other, connections that run deeper than logic or survival. You call it love. You call it loyalty. You would die for people you have never met, simply because they belong to the same tribe. He showed her recordings of her crew, the 12 people who had died defending the ship. He showed her their final moments, played in slow motion, narrated with clinical detail. This one, he said, pointing to a young man with red hair. He tried to shield the others with his body. Foolish. My soldiers cut through him in seconds. But he kept trying, even as he died. Why? What did he gain from such a pointless sacrifice? He gained everything, Elena whispered. Sithrek frowned. Explain. He died fighting. He died protecting his friends. He died human. Elena lifted her head, and there was something in her eyes that Sithrek had not seen before. Something dangerous. That is more than you will ever understand. For a moment, the commander was silent. Then he shook his head. You cling to foolish ideas. It will not save you. But that night, when Sithrek returned to his quarters, he found himself thinking about her words. He had broken thousands of prisoners, members of hundreds of species. Most of them gave up after the first day. The strongest lasted perhaps a week. None of them had ever looked at him the way Elena did, like she was the one in control. On the 6th day, something changed. Sithrek entered the interrogation sphere and found Elena standing. She should not have been able to stand. Her injuries were severe, her body pushed far beyond its limits. But there she was, upright, facing the entrance with her hands at her sides. You are stronger than I expected, Sithrek admitted. But strength has limits. Everyone breaks eventually. Maybe, Elena said. Her voice was rough, damaged, but steady. But not today. What makes you so certain? Elena looked at him, and her eyes were clear. Because you have made a mistake. Every predator makes it eventually. You have given me nothing left to lose. Sithrek moved closer. Is that supposed to frighten me? You are wounded, alone, and trapped in a cell with no exit. What can you possibly do? Elena smiled that same small smile. Let me show you. That night, 3 Varathi guards died. Elena had spent her days in captivity observing everything. She watched the guards, learned their patterns, studied their weaknesses. She noticed that the heating elements in the walls gave off enough energy to cauterize a wound. She noticed that the viewing panel in her cell was held in place by pressure seals, not locks, and she noticed that her own body, broken as it was, still contained bones. She had torn a small shard from her own finger. The pain was incredible. The pain had become a constant companion. She barely noticed it anymore. She used the heating element to seal the wound, then spent hours sharpening the bone against the floor until it was as thin and sharp as a needle. When the first guard came to check on her, she drove the bone into his eye. The second guard died before he could raise his weapon. Elena moved with a speed that should have been impossible for someone in her condition, but desperation gave her strength that defied logic. She used the first guard's claw, still attached to his severed hand. to open the second one's throat. The third guard managed to sound an alarm before she killed him. Within minutes, the entire ship was hunting for her. Sithrak himself led the search, his forearms spread wide as he stalked through the corridors. When they finally cornered her in a maintenance shaft, covered in blood that was mostly not her own, he expected to feel satisfaction. Instead, he felt that strange, unfamiliar sensation again, the one he had not experienced in centuries. Elena was unconscious, finally overcome by her wounds. But as they carried her back to her cell, Sithrak noticed something that bothered him deeply. Even in unconsciousness, she was still smiling. He ordered her wounds treated. He doubled the guards. He reinforced the cell with additional security measures. And for the first time in his very long life, Commander Sithrak found himself unable to sleep. The human was prey. He was certain of it. Her species was weak, fragile, barely worth hunting. She should have broken days ago. She should have been begging for death, but she wasn't. And the more he tried to destroy her, the stronger she seemed to become. What kind of creature grew stronger through suffering? What kind of mind found clarity in pain? Sithrak did not know. And that was what frightened him most of all. 2 weeks had passed since Elena killed the guards. Her wounds had healed, at least enough for her to walk without falling. The Vorathi medical technology was advanced, meant to keep prisoners alive for as long as possible. They wanted her healthy. They had plans for her. Thra came to her cell with an offer. "You have impressed me," he said, and there was something almost like respect in his voice. "I have broken many creatures over the centuries, but none have fought like you. None have killed 3 of my guards with a piece of their own bone." He paused. "I am going to give you a chance to save your people." Elena stood at the back of her cell, watching him with careful eyes. She did not trust him. She would never trust him. But she listened. "There is a place on this ship called the hunting deck," Sithrak explained. "It is a labyrinth, several kilometers of corridors and chambers designed for one purpose. We release prisoners there and hunt them for sport. Most survive less than an hour. And you want me to run? I want you to survive. If you can last for 7 days on the hunting deck, I will spare 100 of your colonists. They will be released, given a ship, and allowed to go free." Elena knew it was a trap. Everything with the Vorathi was a trap. But 100 lives was 100 lives, and if I die, then you die, and your colonists join you. Sithrak smiled his terrible smile. "But you will not die quickly. I will make certain of that." Elena closed her eyes for a moment. She thought of the people sleeping in those pods, trusting her to save them. She thought of the crew she had lost. She thought of everything she had already survived. Then she opened her eyes and nodded. "I accept." The hunting deck was worse than she had imagined. It was built from the bones of a dozen species, arranged into walls and floors and ceilings that seemed to shift and change when she wasn't looking. The lighting was dim and uneven, designed to create shadows where predators could hide. The air was thick with the smell of blood, both old and new, and Elena was not alone. She discovered this on her first day, when she nearly walked into a group of Vorathi hunters and was pulled into a side passage by something with too many arms. "Quiet, soft one," the creature whispered. Its voice sounded like wind through broken glass. "They will hear." Elena looked at her rescuer. It was roughly her size, covered in gray skin that blended perfectly with the walls. 3 eyes blinked at her from a face that had no other features. "Who are you?" Elena asked quietly. "I am Keth. I was a merchant before the Vorathi took me. Now I am prey, like you." Elena looked around the small alcove where Keth had hidden. There were others here, huddled in the darkness. She counted 7 different species, none of which she recognized. "How long have you been here?" 53 days, Keth said. "Longer than anyone else." They cannot find me because I know how to hide. But hiding is all I can do. Eventually, they will catch me. They always catch everyone. Elena studied the group. They were broken. She could see that. Whatever fight they once had was gone. They were waiting to die. What if there was another option? Elena asked. Kath's 3 eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean, what if we stopped running and started hunting them instead? There was a long silence. Then, from the back of the group, a harsh laugh. You are insane, human. The speaker was a massive creature with stone-like skin and tusks that curved from its lower jaw. The Vorathi cannot be hunted. They are the hunters. They have always been the hunters. Everything that hunts can be hunted, Elena replied. They have weapons, yes. They have numbers and strength and technology. But they have something else too. They have arrogance. They have never faced prey that fought back. And that makes them predictable. She stood up, ignoring the pain in her barely healed body. I have watched them. Their patrol patterns never change. They rely on their sensors to find us, but those sensors have blind spots. They hunt in groups of 3, always 3, because they believe 3 is enough to kill anything. They are wrong. Kath moved closer. How do you know all this? Because I paid attention. Because while they were hurting me, I was studying them. Elena looked around the group. I cannot force you to fight, but I am done running. I am done being prey. If I am going to die on this ship, I am going to die on my feet, not on my knees. She started to walk away. Then she stopped and turned back. Tomorrow, at what they call the 4th cycle, there will be a patrol passing through the junction near the water recycling unit. There will be 3 of them, as always. The junction has 2 exits, but both are visible from the main corridor. There is no good place to hide there. Then it is suicide to go there, the stone creature said. It would be suicide to hide there, Elena corrected. But there is a maintenance shaft that runs above the junction. The Vorathi never look up. They are too confident to consider that prey might attack from above. She paused. I will be in that shaft tomorrow. If any of you want to join me, I will not turn you away. She walked into the darkness of the labyrinth, leaving them staring after her dot the next day. Elena killed her first Vorathi on the hunting deck. She did it with a length of metal pipe she had found in a collapsed section, swinging down from the maintenance shaft like something out of a nightmare. The Vorathi never saw her coming. By the time the other 2 hunters realized what was happening, she had already taken their partner's weapon and was using it against them. It was not a clean fight. Elena took wounds that would have killed most humans. But when the blood stopped flowing and the bodies stopped moving, she was the one still standing. And she was not alone. Kath had come. The stone creature, whose name was Gorax, had come. 5 others had come. They looked at the dead Vorathi, then at Elena, and something changed in their eyes. Something that had been dead for a long time flickered back to life. Teach us, Kath said. Elena picked up one of the Vorathi weapons and handed it over. Every one of you has something the Vorathi fear. You have been told your whole lives that you are prey, that you are weak, that you exist only to be hunted. They lied to you. She looked at each of them in turn. You are survivors. You have lasted longer in this hell than they ever expected. And now you are going to show them what survivors can do when they stop being afraid. Over the next 6 days, Elena's group grew. Word spread through the hunting deck in whispers and glances. The human woman who killed the hunters. The prey that became predator. Some thought it was a story, a myth to give them hope. But then they saw the bodies. They saw the stolen weapons. They saw prisoners walking with their heads held high for the first time since their capture. And they came by the 7th day. Elena had over 40 followers from 17 different species. She had killed 11 Vorathi warriors. The hunting parties that entered the labyrinth no longer walked with confidence. They jumped at shadows, flinched at sounds, aimed their weapons at nothing. Sithrak watched all of this through the surveillance feeds, and the fear in his heart grew deeper with every passing hour. She was supposed to die. She was supposed to break. She was supposed to prove that humans were weak, that they were nothing special, that they could be consumed like all the others. Instead, she was becoming something else, something he had never seen in all his centuries of hunting. She was becoming hope. And hope, Sithrak was beginning to understand, was the most dangerous weapon of all. The rebellion did not start with weapons. It started with a choice. Elena had spent 7 days in the hunting deck. She had survived, just as Sithrak demanded. But when the Varathi came to collect her, expecting a broken woman ready to accept whatever scraps of mercy they offered, they found something very different. They found an army. Elena stood at the center of the labyrinth, surrounded by former prisoners who no longer looked like prey. They held stolen weapons, wore stolen armor, and carried themselves like soldiers. The hunting party sent to retrieve her never made it back. Sithrak watched through the surveillance feeds, and for the first time, he felt true fear. How many? He demanded. 47 confirmed, his lieutenant reported. But there may be more. Our sensors cannot track them anymore. They have learned how to avoid detection. They are prisoners, Sithrak hissed. Pray, how have they learned to evade us? The lieutenant had no answer. Neither did anyone else. On the same day that Elena was supposed to be collected from the hunting deck, something else happened across the ship. Something that changed everything. In the harvesting bays, where colonists were being processed for biological material, a young woman named Sarah refused to walk to her execution. She was barely 20 years old. She had been a farmer on Earth before joining the colony mission, dreaming of green fields under an alien sun. When the Varathi took her, she had wept and begged like all the others. But then she heard the stories. Whispers passed from cell to cell, carried by prisoners who had seen things they could not explain. The human captain who killed guards with her own bones. The woman in the labyrinth who taught prey to hunt. Sarah stopped walking. The Varathi guard behind her did not understand at first. It prodded her with its shock stick, expecting the usual response of pain and obedience. But Sarah did not move. She sat down on the cold metal floor and looked up at the alien with calm eyes. No, she said simply. The guard struck her harder. She did not scream. She did not rise. She just kept saying that one word over and over. No, no. Other prisoners saw what was happening. They stopped walking too. One by one, then in groups, then in waves. The entire harvesting bay ground to a halt as humans and aliens alike simply sat down and refused to cooperate. The guards tried violence. They tried threats. They tried killing one prisoner as an example to the others. It did not work. For every prisoner they killed, 2 more stopped cooperating. The bodies piled up, but so did the resistance. The harvesting machinery clogged with corpses because no one would move the dead. The guards found themselves wading through blood, but the blood was not changing anything. Sithrak received reports from across the ship. The cryogenic bays had gone silent as prisoners barricaded themselves inside. The engineering section was experiencing unexplained malfunctions that the Varathi technicians could not repair. The water recycling system was contaminated. The lighting on 3 decks had failed completely, and somewhere in the darkness of the hunting deck, Elena was moving. She had memorized every corridor of the labyrinth. Now she was mapping the rest of the ship, learning its secrets, finding its weaknesses. Keth could squeeze through spaces too small for Varathi bodies. Gorax could punch through walls that were supposed to be unbreakable. Every species in her little army had something to offer. and Elena used them all. On the 23rd day since her capture, Elena reached the reactor core. The reactor was the heart of the endless maw. It powered everything, from the weapons to the life support to the engines that moved the massive ship through space. It was also the most heavily guarded location on the vessel. But Elena had not come to destroy it. She had spent her time in captivity listening. When the Varathi spoke to each other, they assumed their prisoners could not understand their language. They were wrong. Elena had learned enough to follow their conversations, and she had learned something important about the reactor. It was not just a power source. It was a control system. Whoever held the reactor controlled the ship. Sithrak met her at the threshold. He came with his honor guard, 12 of the finest warriors the Varathi had ever produced. They were armed with weapons that could level buildings, protected by armor that could withstand anything short of a direct nuclear strike. Elena faced them with 17 survivors at her back. They had no armor, only stolen weapons and wounds that were still healing. It should not have been a fight. It should have been a massacre. But Sithrak hesitated. He looked at Elena, at the scars on her hands and face, at the steel in her eyes, and he felt that fear again. The fear he had been feeling more and more often since she first smiled at him in the command center of her ship. "You cannot win," he said. "Even if you take the reactor, even if you somehow destroy the ship, the Dominion will hunt your species to extinction. There are 1,000 vessels like this one. 1,000,000 warriors. You cannot defeat us all." Elena's hand rested on the reactor override panel. One touch, and she could trigger a cascade failure that would tear the endless maw apart from the inside. "Maybe," she replied. "But you will not be there to see it. You would die? For them?" Sithrak gestured at the ragged creatures behind her. "For aliens you have known for weeks? For colonists who are already half dead?" Elena looked at her people. Keth, who had hidden for 53 days and was now ready to fight. Gorax, who had believed his entire life that he was nothing but prey. Sarah, who had started a revolution by simply saying no. "I would die for the chance that they do not have to," Elena said. Sci-Fi raised his weapon. "Then die." Elena's hand moved, but she did not trigger a cascade failure. Instead, she entered a different code, one she had pieced together from overheard conversations and stolen datapads and hours of patient, desperate study. The lights went out. When they came back on. Every door on the ship had locked. Every weapon system had gone offline. Every Varathi terminal displayed the same message in their own language. Control transferred. Sithrak stared at the message, then at Elena. "What have you done?" "I have not destroyed your ship," Elena said. "I have taken it." The battle that followed was brutal and short. Without their weapons, without their ship responding to their commands, the Varathi were forced to fight with claws and teeth alone. They were still dangerous. They were still powerful, but they were no longer in control. Elena's army swept through the endless maw like a fire. Every prisoner who could walk joined the fight. Every species that had been told it was weak, that it was prey, that it existed only to be hunted, rose up and proved the Varathi wrong. By the end, more than half of the Varathi crew was dead. The rest were locked in their own cells, guarded by the creatures they had once tormented. And the Horizon's promise, still held in the dreadnought's grappling arms, was finally freed. Elena stood on the bridge of the endless maw and looked out at the stars. Her ship was safe. Her colonists, those who had survived, were being woken from their frozen sleep. 8,000 souls saved from extinction. 2,000 had not been so lucky. Elena knew their names. Every single one. Keth approached her carefully. "What now, Captain? What do we do with this ship? With the prisoners?" Elena thought for a long moment. Then she gave the order that would define humanity's place in the galaxy for generations to come. Bring me Sithrak. They brought Sithrak to the bridge in chains, thought the chains were symbolic more than practical. He was wounded, defeated, stripped of everything that had once made him powerful. His scales had lost their color, faded to a dull gray that made him look ancient. His forearms hung limp at his sides. His eyes, once the color of dying suns, were empty. Alana watched him approach. She stood where he had once stood, at the center of the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The same stars he had watched when he first detected her colony ship and decided to hunt her. How quickly things had changed. "You wanted to see me," Sithrak said. His voice was still rough, still deep, but there was no threat in it anymore. "I did." Elena turned to face him. "I have been thinking about what to do with you." Sithrak laughed bitterly. "Kill me. It is what I would do. What any sensible predator would do. Perhaps. But I am not a predator. You killed many of my people. You led an army against us. You took my ship from me with nothing but your mind and your will. If that is not a predator, what is?" Elena was silent for a moment. Then she gestured to the stars beyond the viewport. "Out there, somewhere, is your dominion. 1,000 ships, you said. 1,000,000 warriors. If I kill you here, they will never know what happened. They will assume you died in some accident, some malfunction. They will send another ship, and another, until humanity is finally wiped from existence." Sithrak tilted his head. "You intend to release me. I intend to send you home with a message." She stepped closer to him. The guards around them tensed, but Elena waved them back. "Go back to your dominion," she said. "Tell them what happened here. Tell them that you found a species you thought was weak, fragile, insignificant. Tell them that you captured their captain and tried to break her. Tell them that you failed." Sithrak's empty eyes flickered with something. Not anger, not hatred. Something closer to curiosity. "And what else should I tell them?" "Tell them that humans do not break. Tell them that we remember every wound, every insult, every life you take from us. Tell them that we are patient, and we are stubborn, and we learn from our enemies." Elena leaned closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "And tell them that the next time they come for us, we will not just survive. We will follow them home." The words hung in the air between them. Sithrak stared at her for a long moment. "You are bluffing," he said finally. "Your species does not have the technology to threaten the Dominion. You are barely capable of traveling between stars." "Today," Elena agreed. "But not forever. We grow fast, Sithrak. Faster than you can imagine. In 100 years, we will be stronger. In 1,000, we will be unstoppable. And we will remember you. We will remember everything." She stepped back. "Take him to the airlock. Give him a beacon so his people can find him." The guards moved to obey. As they led Sithrak away, he turned back one last time. "You are different," he said, "from every species I have ever hunted. I still do not understand why." Elena considered the question. "Because we were never meant to be predators or prey. We were something else. Something that chooses what it becomes, moment by moment. And when you pushed us into a corner, we chose to become something you had never faced before. And what is that? Survivors." Sithrak was released into the void. A Dominion scout ship found him 3 days later, drifting in the cold darkness, alive only because of the heating unit in his emergency suit. He was brought before the High Council of the Vorati Dominion and questioned for weeks about what had happened. He told them everything. The council did not believe him at first. A single human woman defeating a dreadnought commander? Prisoners rising up and taking control of a ship? It sounded like madness, but then they sent scouts to investigate. They found the endless maw still floating in the void, emptied of prisoners and stripped of its most valuable technologies. They found evidence of the battle, the blood, the bodies. They found the message Elena had left in the ship's computers. Remember, the Vorathi Dominion debated for months about how to respond. Some called for immediate retaliation, for a fleet to descend on human space and wipe out the insolent species once and for all. Others urged caution, arguing that any species capable of doing what Elena had done was not to be underestimated. In the end, they chose neither. They simply stayed away. For 50 years, no Vorathi ship entered human space. Then 100 years. Then 1,000. By the time humanity had grown powerful enough to reach the edges of Vorathi territory, the Dominion had already begun its long, slow decline. They had hunted too many species, destroyed too many civilizations. They had forgotten how to be anything other than predators. And predators, as Elena had once said, were always vulnerable to prey that chose to become something else. On the colony world that the Horizon's promise finally reached, Elena lived for another 63 years. She saw her colonists build cities, raise children, create a civilization that would eventually spread across a dozen star systems. But she never forgot what she had done. The scars on her hands never fully healed. The finger she had broken to make a weapon remained crooked and painful for the rest of her life. Some nights, she woke up screaming from dreams of the interrogation sphere, of the hunting deck, of all the blood she had spilled. In her final years, a journalist came to interview her about the events aboard the Endless Maw. The story had become legend by then, repeated in schools across human space. Elena Vasquez, the woman who defeated an empire with nothing but her will. "You were called a hero," the journalist said. "You saved 8,000 lives and proved that humanity could stand against any threat. How does it feel to be remembered that way?" Elena looked out the window of her small home. The colony had grown beautiful over the decades. Green fields stretched to the horizon, just as she had once imagined. Children played in the streets, unafraid. "He thought he was taking my life," she said quietly. "Sithrak, I mean. He thought he was destroying my existence, breaking me down until there was nothing left. But that is not what nearly killed me. What did?" Elena was silent for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was tired. "Becoming something that could do what I did. The things I chose, the person I became to survive. That almost took everything I was. Every bit of softness, every bit of mercy. I could feel myself turning into something hard and cold, something that did not care about anything except winning." She looked down at her scarred hands. "The fight was the easy part. The hard part was finding my way back afterward. Remembering how to be human again after I had forced myself to be something else. Did you find your way back?" Elena smiled. It was the same smile she had given Sithrak all those years ago. But now there was warmth in it, peace. Eventually. It took a long time. I had help. She paused. "Some things are worth losing yourself for, but only if you fight just as hard to find yourself again." The journalist left, and Elena sat alone with her memories. The evening light painted the sky in shades of gold and red, and somewhere in the distance, children were laughing. She closed her eyes and listened. This was what she had fought for. This was what she had almost destroyed herself to protect. Not just survival, but the chance to live. The chance to be human again, in a universe that had tried its best to take that humanity away. She had won. Not just the battle, but the war that came after. The quiet, invisible war to remain who she had always been. And that, in the end, was the only victory that truly mattered.